Welcome back to the Chase MedSearch podcast. My guest today is Dave Youngberg, newly minted Chief Commercial Officer at SPR Therapeutics. Dave brings over 25 years of experience in the medical device and pharmaceutical industries with a track record of building and leading high-performing sales teams. Before joining SPR, Dave held sales leadership roles at companies like Nevro, Medtronic, Covidien, Mallinckrodt, and CNS Therapeutics, where he led the national launch for Gabapentin. He also helped guide Restore Medical through its IPO and eventual acquisition by Medtronic. Dave's career has spanned innovative work in pain management, neuromodulation, and surgical devices, and it all began after serving honorably in the U.S. Navy and earning his degree in economics from the University of Minnesota. Dave's been on the front lines of multiple successful exits, product launches, and market expansions. He's someone who truly understands what it takes to win in medical sales, and we're excited to have him on the show. Welcome, Dave.
Welcome. Who's that guy you just described? It doesn't sound like me.
That's you, man. You can
Yeah.
listen to that every day if you want after
Yeah.
after we record all this. I'm glad to have you on. It's great working with you. Dave, I should say SPR is a client. I work closely with Dave. I don't know if that's a needed disclaimer or not, but I am a big fan of his and the work that they do at SPR Therapeutics, which we're going to dive into. But there's always a need for a little context and background. Dave, tell us about your journey into medical device sales.
Sure. And thanks for having me, Jordan. This is a real privilege as well. And enjoy working with you. You've been just a solid partner for us, and can't thank you enough for how you've helped us build out our organization with high quality people. So right back at you. For me, as you went through that history, came out of the Navy, went to J&J as a sales rep, and transitioned after 4.5 years with Johnson & Johnson, Ethicon Endosurgery. Cut my teeth there in medical device, and continued on to Medtronic, where I got into neuromodulation. At a certain point in my career at Medtronic, we started an oncology division, and that ended up like a startup within a bigger organization, and it ended up closing shop for that focused effort. There was 8 areas there that we started in the country with a specific device for chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. Technology superseded the device in terms of outcomes, and so outcomes you're going to at least hear from me are critical. Data is critical, and in that case, there was less invasive, non-invasive procedure for hepatic cancer that really had us shift and shut that division down at Medtronic. But that was the beginning for me for the startups, and so I followed that device to a company called Horizon Medical Products down in Atlanta. And that was a point in time where I was considering coming back to Medtronic once that integration happened, but I really enjoyed the smaller team building and marketplace building. So I continued on from there. Then you picked it up at Restore Medical, where we had a sleep apnea company that we eventually did take an IPO, and then it was folded into Medtronic a little bit later. Mm-hmm. From there, after Restore, hooked up with my mentor, John Foster, out of Medtronic, and we started CNS Therapeutics. Yeah. And that was just an amazing experience there as we went after a giant in the area, Medtronic, for Lioresal, which was intrathecal baclofen that went in the pump. We quickly took about 30% of that marketplace. Better, it was a generic of the drug, exact generic of it, but it was in a much easier packaging that allowed so you didn't have to break ampules. From there, we sold that to Mallinckrodt, and then at that point, I was going to take a little bit of break, and then a friend of mine called me from Nevro, and I should say there's one other startup that I did that we ended up having to shut it down, so you're not going to see it on my LinkedIn, but it was a intracranial pressure monitoring company. And I'll tell you that that was probably one of the biggest learning moments for me, is when technology fails and how important due diligence is. And as I'm sitting here at SPR Therapeutics, I did quite a bit of due diligence before I came to this company, and we'll probably get to that. Then I went to Nevro, and then from Nevro to here we are at SPR Therapeutics, and the
Yeah.
longest place I've ever worked, Jordan. So I'm here 9 years now. That'll say something in itself.
That's fantastic. And in lovely Cleveland, I should add, right? You're in,
I love the Cleveland. Yeah, the heart of rock and roll, right here in
wow.
Cleveland. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Um, can you share with us, a pivotal moment in your career that helped shape your leadership style? I think that's always important when I interview folks in your position that are charged with leading sales organizations, dealing with investors, and all the things that you do. You know, can you share with us something formative in your career that really shaped it?
Yeah, but I have to go back to the Navy. It was the
Yeah.
training there was just phenomenal. I flew P3s, and we had a crew of 11, and our mission was one that really required coordination. Everybody had to do their job to get it
Yeah.
done, and so
Hmm.
that was the foundation that when I look at leading by example, I look at to my leaders in the Navy
Hmm.
is really fundamental. I would even leapfrog from there to talk about what Maria Bennett's done here.
Hmm.
If you, as you think about what I just described from my career, when I met Maria, I knew I had a true leader in front of me that is uh, is going to find people to advance the organization with a patient focus,
Yeah.
and you know have accountability part of the equation, but empowering people to get their job done. So that foundation of the Navy was critical, and then getting into a transition from J&J to Medtronic, and as I mentioned, my mentor John Foster was really critical in having me look at what it means to build teams and ensure that you make it very transparent for people for what success looks like, and
Hmm.
empower them to get that done.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've interviewed people before that have military experience in early formative leaderships at a young age. Seems to be what is just key in the military's
26.
development. And
Yeah.
you're leading men sometimes twice your age, and you're trying to figure it out and learning a lot along the way. So kudos to you for flying P3s too. That sounds like quite an experience.
That was really fun. If I wasn't doing this, I'd be doing that.
I That was going to be a question later on. Yeah, that's great. Um, SPR Therapeutics, great place to work. I saw just won another award for being a great place to work. But in the neuromodulation space itself, when it comes to the specific therapy, what makes SPR Therapeutics different from what's out there and what's available?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jordan. As I mentioned to you, I was in the neuromodulation space with Medtronic and Nevro, and that was the spinal cord stimulation
Hmm.
focus, central nervous system. Now, Medtronic did have deep brain stimulation as well, and I got into a little bit of that. But you can start, with data being really, really critical. And as we build out our data, I'll take a moment here just to brag a little bit about what Maria and her team have done. And when I think about that team, it's Josh Boggs and his PhDs out of Chapel Hill. There's three offices we have here in Cleveland. Our scientists are in Chapel Hill, and then our marketing and market access are in Minneapolis. Josh and his team at Maria's leadership have built out a data that is second to none,
Hmm.
and RCTs that help physicians make choices and be able to communicate to patients that this is the right treatment for them. So peripheral nerve stimulation has been around for a long time. It's even preceded spinal cord stimulation, but technology wasn't there. So, starting in 2015, and when 2016 happened for SPR Therapeutics, Sprint was approved. It changed the landscape right now from a minimally invasive procedure that was temporary, so you can actually pull it out, and when you pull out the Sprint lead, you have no idea that you had anything in your body. So it's a 1/3 of a millimeter. It's a game changer in what it does for pain relief and sustained pain relief. So the landscape right now for neuromodulation is changing, and it's really an exciting time to be a pain physician right now. And if you are in one of those scenarios as a patient where you either chronic or acute pain, because we're indicated for both, but we were look to focus on chronic pain, the options that your physician is going to offer you right now to include Sprint is pretty amazing.
Hmm. Tell us about like the procedure itself. How does it go in? How's it inserted?
Sure.
Give us kind of a sketch it
Sure.
out for folks that aren't familiar.
You got it. You got it. If we can identify the nerve, or the physician identifies the nerve, the pain generator, and you'll hear our physicians on the podium talking about find the nerve that is the culprit here, and we get proximal to the injury, so we get between where the injury is and the brain, and we introduce our electrode via a needle. So it's a needle procedure that requires either imaging of either fluoroscopy or ultrasound. And ultrasound right now is becoming a much more prevalent imaging in the training programs right now. So most of our physicians that come through any sort of fellowship will have ultrasound training. And so they can identify a nerve within other soft tissue and approximate our electrode. As I mentioned, on the lead itself, it's 1/3 of a millimeter in size, so 300 microns, very small. And it is introduced by a 20 gauge needle. So little lidocaine, they would call at the entry site, a skin wheel is what they'll call it. And then they'll start to guide the needle under ultrasound image, if we were to use that as an example, to approximate our electrode by the nerve, but not intimately on top of it. And then we would, at that point, start to bring up stimulation to create paresthesias over that nerve, which usually gives the patient a tingling sensation over the area that they normally have pain. We then, at that point, or the physician will then deploy the lead in a very simple way, and then we'll connect our a micro lead connector to the actual lead itself, and then connect it to our external generator, which is affixed to the body. And for 60 days, depending upon what type of treatment they're getting, which is dependent upon frequency, they'll have it on for either 6 to 12 hours a day or 24/7. You can shower with it, but you can't submerge it. So it takes a commitment for the patient as well to go through this treatment, but really minimally invasive. And as I mentioned before, once it's all done, that telephone cable that's miniaturized will come out of the body, and you're done. And then at that point, you are, if you're part of the 70%, you're going to have sustained pain relief, and that's really an important thing for patients that go under procedures.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was talking to a SPR rep the other day, and they said, it's so exciting to be involved with something that almost feels curative. And they had never been involved in anything like that before. And I know that's not a claim that you guys make, but they said just from a rep perspective, it's an amazing situation when that happens for patients. And apparently, a lot of patients get the relief they need.
There's a lot of job satisfaction, Jordan, as you mentioned, from doing what we're doing right now. The other thing that's different than spinal cord stimulation, again, this comes out, and so there isn't you're not following a patient with a device in them in perpetuity. So that changes a little bit of how the organization is structured to support this. In some remote areas, our physicians are doing this independently. We're cautious about that right now, but we've proven that out. We believe it's really important right now as we delight patient, physician, and ultimately payers to make sure that we have the highest quality outcomes. And so we've got a high performance team that is there during the treatment period, during the actual implant, with the exception I just mentioned to you. And then we've got a team of patient support out here that, as the patient's going through their 60-day treatment, they're there with a phone call, with a text, whatever they need at that point. We supply all we provide all the supplies for the device, which is any sort of bandaging and grounding pads, and then at 60 days, as I mentioned, out it comes.
Yeah, that's great. I was at NANS last year. I saw you there at the booth, chatted with Maria again, which was fun, and saw your team, which is just excellent. And Sprint had a big day. I think it was Saturday. It was just really big, really exciting. What do you, kind of, when you think about the excitement clinicians are finding with SPR right now, what do you attribute that to? What do you think, what are you hearing has really got the doctors, dialed in on SPR?
It's a great question, and I'll give you a couple examples, but it's patient outcomes right now. So they have something of a tool in their tool bag that they didn't have before, and they're experiencing outcomes with their patients that are similar to the clinical research. So that's really an important piece for us right now. And I mentioned before that that's one of our goals is to replicate the clinical research in the commercial setting. So we've standardized our processes so that whether I cover a case, and if I haven't done it in a while, but I still can do it, still got that. You'll, as a physician, if you were implanting it, you'd feel 90% of that continuity of what that standardized process looks like. That really is helpful for so many reasons, not only for the staff, but for the eventuality of independent utilization of it. So the outcomes are the critical thing. And another way to look at it is at NANS that year we had 10% of all abstracts. That's physicians submitting independently about patients that they've treated with Sprint, and they were all successful patients across all of our nerves of the body. So we're indicated for head, really the entire body with the exception of the true cranial nerves. So top of the head and face. So if there's a problem, we literally can go after it.
You got it. Yeah. So when it comes to hiring for this company, what do you like to see when you're hiring and looking for new reps? What are some of your go-tos?
Well, I think when you're building a marketplace like we are right now, there's got to be you got to be conscious of that, and so that I don't need a startup mentality, so to speak, but as a high growth med tech company building a marketplace, I need to have that realization that you potentially could be introducing Sprint to somebody even after 8 years. We've got 50 plus territories right now covering most of the major cities. But as physicians go to these society meetings, and we'll take NANS as an example, and they're looking at these abstracts for helping patients with intercostal pain or saphenous pain or shoulder pain, neck pain, not to mention back pain, which is our biggest indication. They're going to want to use this, and they are going to be reaching out to the company, ultimately to the rep, and then they've got to be ready to take that physician down that path and that physician's journey. And so we're really conscious of what it looks like when you introduce Sprint and to ultimately utilizing it. So that rep has to have somewhat of that startup mentality, a huge desire to win. I mean, just like, and winning right now for us is, again, replicating our clinical research in the commercial setting, providing this to nearly 50,000 patients that we have, and we're just scratching the surface. So in some ways, I do like to portray it as a ground floor opportunity still, even if we've been here 8 years. And that's the mindset right now, which is, how can I be a part of something special like that and be a contributor? And I look at that and say, do you have past experience right now of being, of getting to the finish line and being a top performer? Mm-hmm. And then in the process of doing that, do you have a patient focus that doesn't jeopardize any sort of outcome because you're trying to sell a unit? And that's not who we are. We are starting with the patient, collaborating with the physician, and then you as an individual need to work as a team. So I just basically, in summary, just gave you our credo there. Yeah. They're really important that they encompass all of those aspects.
Yeah, there's something you told me when we first started working together too, and you said if they come from outside of neuromodulation where they haven't had as much patient interaction and interaction with the families, I love to see something that shows that they are an empathetic person. And I've never forgotten that. I've actually used that in recruiting for other clients too that have different therapies in neuromodulation, because I do think that's really important. Can you expand on that just a little bit? I know that wasn't on my question sheet, but I thought it was really insightful around that.
Right. I think you touched on something that runs throughout the organization is walking the talk about having it patient focused. We start board meetings with the patient outcomes first and foremost, and then as we're talking about what success looks like right now, we definitely go to outcomes that we track with approval from the patient, that we then report to the physician. That if that doesn't give you a feel good, then it's not the right spot for you, because you're changing people's lives, and you're doing it in a profound way. You get to be involved at the time that they're implanted. You get to understand, what's challenging them, and so that empathy that you mentioned right there, I'll find that out within the first 5 minutes of the interview. And the candidates you sent to me already, Jordan, you're screening them, and so not a lot of them are getting through you without having that piece of the pie.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think a lot of reps that maybe haven't called on the pain specialty before need to understand, or maybe misunderstand, when they first step into the arena of calling on pain doctors?
Well, good question. I can even go back to when I made the transition to Medtronic and getting to neuromodulation. I really didn't think about that question that you just asked right there, and it hit me was when you got into the patient support piece of it. They didn't have the outcomes, the data that we did back then, and so they've come a long ways. But right now, the majority of our patients do well, and as you get close to that empathy with a patient, the patient doesn't do well, you carry that with you. So that part of it where you are not supporting a device where the drapes are on in the OR and you walk out and you have no patient interaction, it's a big change, and most people enjoy it because it just brings another level of satisfaction to what you're doing outside of it getting you a paycheck, and you can't help but feel good about your contribution in support of your clinicians for the implant, and then the patient support piece of it during that 60-day treatment.
Yeah.
You'll hear other neuromodulation reps, and I talk about the fatigue that goes with, having, just a constant need to support patients through they've got a spinal cord stimulator device in them. We don't have that part of it. It's different for us, and I get that feedback from some of my SCS friends that how they look at this differently as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a long sales cycle sometimes when you're building and you're starting out and you're, trying to develop new customer sets and introducing new technology. How do you help reps play the long game sometimes in that? Because you've got complex reimbursement environment, trials, adoption, especially when you're starting a new program. How do you help people keep their head in the game when they might be used to maybe quicker turns?
Yeah. Jordan, you're full of good questions today. So
Well, that's all I do is talk on the phone, ask questions.
yeah. I'll start with we have managers right now that have walked in their shoes. So there's nobody that hasn't done the footwork, the hands-on work that is required for our reps right now. And all of our sales management team will still cover cases. So we call them player coaches. That earns a lot of respect from people.
Yeah.
As they are coming into the company, knowing that there's that level of understanding of how to get it done. If we take that person that's naive to the neuromodulation space and we think about the customers where there is a VAC process for a hospital or an academic center or a government account, whether it's VA or DOD. Now, we just made that much simpler with a national VA contract. We're very excited about that.
Yeah.
As you know, some of our early investment was from the DOD, and so we really feel good about that coming full circle. But to your point, as we're thinking about building a territory strategy and a business plan, we assist with identifying where our pain doctors are practicing. And so we'll show you the targets. And we use a system, a CRM system that most people are using right now, that allows us to create dashboards and processes that will support the rep in the field. So we've got a group in our organization called Sales Operations, and they look at the rep in the field as a customer, and so that support for anything that might require paperwork or process. The rep isn't completely burdened by that. He's got support for it, he or she. And then we know what's required for submission, and we've got that ready to go as well. So it's not as daunting once you get into the organization about, moving an account, whether it's a surgery center or a hospital, through that process, because we've been doing it for 8 years. And here's the unique thing about Sprint, not to be too promotional of it, but it is unique, is that really we're a proprietary technology that's doing something very different. And so we have people calling us right now saying, I'd like to try Sprint. And that is very different when you're thinking about an environment where you've got 5, 6 competitors all going after the same doctor.
Yeah.
That is appealing really to any sales rep when you put it out there and describe that situation to them.
Yeah, that's a good situation to be in. Where do you see SPR going 3 to 5 years from now? What's kind of the vision there as you look out longer term across the horizon?
I don't see our growth changing. We're going to come into 50,000 patients here. We have a 38% 3-year compound growth rate.
Oh.
It's really impressive. It does talk about, I guess, allude to the fact that we've transitioned from that startup to a high growth med tech company. And as I think about our indication right now about acute and chronic pain, and where we enter from a safety profile, we are just scratching the surface. So that 3 to 5 year outlook right now looks very appealing for Sprint to be a much bigger organization, and Sprint may or may not be the only product as we move forward. We're looking at Sprint or SPR being a solution for pain, and so we're looking at both ends of the spectrum for that, and we're excited about continuing to advance Sprint and making sure that we can be the right partner for our physicians at any point where the patient walks through that door. So we're thinking much bigger right now as an organization.
That's great. Any challenges you have currently or you foresee to scaling that kind of adoption 3, 5 years out? I mean, maybe not even just SPR, but there are other players in peripheral nerve.
Sure.
Is the market overall kind of facing a challenge together collectively?
Market access, no doubt about it. The commercial payers right now, they're challenging, and we're going to win them over with data. We actually think all boats will rise because of our data that we have right now. As you mentioned, there are other permanent peripheral nerve stimulation companies that they have a place. We know it, and in fact, we look at that and say, how can we look at that space, and we've got plans for that. But market access right now is one that is metering the growth of neuromodulation, and particularly peripheral nerve stimulation. So you can look back at a similar scenario back in the early 90s, mid 80s, where SCS was coming through, spinal cord stimulation, and having commercial companies say yes to that.
Right.
So the data needs to continue. As I mentioned, our team in Chapel Hill is really done a great job putting us in position right now with the data set that we have, with strong RCTs, and another one here to land here shortly for low back. It's over 200 patients. We expect that to be a game changer. Wow. And then we've got Todd Davis, we got recently as our Vice President of Market Access. Yep. So we're super excited about his impact and his team. They're already doing it. There really are partners out there right now that I haven't experienced before. So I'm delighted that Todd's joined the organization. He's 6 months into it, I think, but it feels like he's already making a big impact for the organization, and he's a card-carrying credo guy. So he knows what it means to work at SPR, and we're just super fortunate to have Todd, and he's building out his team, both for market access and patient access. So that when we talk about that commercial payer right now, we're set to fight the fight with the commercial payers on behalf of the patient. So we have a unique process that Todd and his team have put together, and Amy Woods came over as well. She had some experience that preceded us with Nebro, and so she knows what she's doing on that side of it. We're prepared to move that forward to the point where payers say yes, and that will be a big part of the future growth of the company.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Bright future, and it was so fun catching up with Todd at Nan's too. He's just a great guy to hang out with and talk with, and knows so much and has seen so much in the startup world. Real
He's a little
asset.
too happy, but that's okay. He's a little,
He is happy. Let's uh let's talk a little bit about just, personal habits, advice. Let's take Dave Youngberg when he was, early in his career. And what habits, what advice would you give your younger self, looking back on your career now? What would you, tell someone who is just starting out in the field?
well, I've got uh, several clinically focused, we call them field clinical specialists in our organization, that are asking that very same question and saying, well, what can I do to get to here? And it doesn't have to be in sales. It could be, I want to transition to marketing. So they want professional development. I'm a pretty simple guy when it comes to this. Work ethic is a really important thing for me. So that as you're talking about somebody that doesn't come in with the same background that is immediately transferable, where they don't have the relationships that we know are important in the pain space. I no longer am that concerned about that, and you've been very helpful to help me see the potential of those candidates that you brought forward that don't have it, and we've got really successful transitions, but it starts with a work ethic and their desire to win. And so that, as we support that through our training program right now, we've done that in a way that, depending upon where they're at, we've got a virtual training program that allows them to start with just the basic neuromodulation, if they've got sales background, or if it's a field clinical specialist, a patient support aspect of it is something that we'll focus on with them. Both of them very important, but that core drive to succeed, and I call it a balance between competitive collaboration, where you are desiring to win, but you've got to collaborate with your colleagues, and you have a mindset that team is important. It can't be done alone. As I made mention to it earlier, I was a big part of the Navy, and when I met Maria, I could see the team that she was building, and I wanted to get on board with that. So for me, it's that balancing act of drive for success, and then working with others in the organization for the better good of the organization.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any, lifestyle habits that you have? You have a lot of energy. For people that don't know Dave personally, I mean, you have a ton of energy every time I talk to you. And, is there anything you're doing in your life? You up at 5? Are you doing yoga? Give us a peek behind the curtain with you.
Well, Jordan, you're setting me up now for disclosure about some transitions I'm trying to make right now. So I am working on work-life balance.
Okay.
I do enjoy working here. I mean, and I get feedback from my wife, from my colleagues, from Maria, about making sure that I've got a work-life balance. So I try to work out as much as I can. I've been doing some of those HIIT classes. Now there's
Oh yeah, sure.
high intensity stuff, and I am 60 now, and so when I get in these classes, I'm not winning there as much as I want to be winning against the much younger people, but I am motivated to compete, even if I'm not directly competing. So that a little bit of that. Family is really important to me right now, so I have to focus on that. I've got 3 daughters. I've got some granddaughters right now. I'm really blessed by an amazing wife right now that supports what I'm doing, and so that's a key and critical thing for me.
Yeah, that's great. Just maybe a few more and we'll wrap it up. But I always love the personal side, so I'm going to keep going a little bit here. Do you have a favorite sales book or podcast that was foundational for you, or something you're listening to now that you just can't wait when an episode rolls out? I mean, not mine, of course, but, not trying to do any self-promotion here, but other resources,
I have a book that I've been handing out. I've been handed out to a couple of my physicians. It's called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. Okay. And it is about challenging yourself and to getting outside of something that is a predictable outcome, and that you're going to do something more. Earlier, and there's a term called Misogi, M-I-S-O-G-I, and it's a Asian term for extreme challenge. And back in the day, it was one where if you had a 50% chance of not surviving. So that, we're not talking about that. So it's a modified Misogi right now that is saying, can I get there? And either whether it's in physical fitness or in your business life, or really kind of applies to anything, challenging yourself to do something that there's a 50% chance you're not going to get it done. And it could be something that, you're getting back into running, and I haven't done it for a while, and I'm going to do a 5K, and I'm not going to walk. That book to me it's a really good book. It goes way past the simplicity of how I'm describing it right now. And it's a read that I've given to my family. They've even given to people like Tim Deere, who's a Misogi champion of challenging himself with these extreme races. So yeah, that would be the book I've been reading recently.
That's fantastic. Okay, well, we'll close it out with this one last question. And you talked about John Foster earlier, obviously a medtech pioneer and a mentor of yours. Is there a particular piece of advice John gave you in your career that stands out to you, or any other mentor that you would say, this is the best advice I ever got?
Yeah. John coined a term for me that I have used throughout my career called HAG, Hairy Audacious Goal. And underneath that simple term would be some of the things that we've talked about right now about achieving these goals, and ensuring that you're looking at challenging yourself. So it kind of fits in that book as well. But John would talk about simple things like expect what you inspect. So if you're talking about people or yourself, make sure that you're doing that type of inspection and reflection about the goals that you set for yourself, and how you get to them or not get to them, and what you do to reset and go after them. So it's a continual process of, you can call it betterment if you want to, but that it drives me. It's part of who I am, and John, and then I'll even bring Maria into this too, have continued to say, we're not done even close here.
Right.
And how are we going to move this forward, and working with people? So the idea of creating goals, inspecting them, and then reflecting on what you need to do to change. Keeping that in the forefront right there. We have dashboards right now that we use, that we look at the business, and so now it's really kind of your own personal dashboard. Like, where am I at? How am I going to get there? And then I'll bring it back to the challenge you gave to me earlier, or the question, which is how does that fit into your life right now from this work-life balance? And everybody's got their own work-life balance, and being respectful of that for some people who go, hey, you know what? I gotta take a break. I tell people when I'm interviewing, after you send them to us, Jordan, that Friday you might be really tired because you worked a lot. It's a work of passion in some cases, but this is a job for you. If Monday, if you wake up and go, I'm ready to go. So it's just that type of thing where you have that recharge and you're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
I'd end with that kind of little promotion.
I love it. Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, everybody. This is Dave Youngberg, and he is the Chief Commercial Officer of SPR Therapeutics. Dave, thank you so much for being on. The website is sprtherapeutics.com. If you are looking for possibly your next opportunity, you could go there and apply. And at some point, if you are contacted, it will eventually be by me. SPR is a great client, and I have had so many successful placements here who are here and love it, and they love the culture. So that is my take on SPR. Dave, thank you for being on today with us.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate the opportunity, really do. So thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Chase MedSearch podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Be sure to visit our website at chasemedsearch.com and drop a resume. That way you never miss a job opportunity. And please subscribe to our YouTube platform, even if you like to consume the content in other ways. It really helps our algorithm, and we'd love to see you.